Hello everybody, welcome to 10 Minutes Art History, 10 Minuten Kunstgeschichte. My name is Dominik Brabant. I'm from Zentralinstitut für Kunstgeschichte in Munich, Central Institute for Art History in Munich. And this is a new series we are starting now, which presents to all of you who are interested in art history, students of art history, colleagues, everybody who wants to get to know more about art history. We will talk about debates, we will talk about discussions in art history, we are going to talk about how topics in art history are approached. This series will take place in museums, in exhibitions, and today, as you can see, we are in a garden. This is the English garden, der Englische Garten in Munich, and I have two experts with me. Iris Lauterbach from Zentralinstitut für Kunstgeschichte and Denis Ribouillaut from the University of Montreal.
Hello, I'm Iris Lauterbach and I am an art historian who specialized in garden history from the very beginning. My dissertation was on garden history and I have always been fascinated by that topic, the garden history. Gardens are a universe of trees, of natural vegetation, and still we have to look at it from the point of view of art history, and that means that it's the history of architecture, the history of botany and of the use of historic plants.
I was very lucky to be invited by the Zentralinstitut to spend the summer as a Panofsky professor, where I researched art history and garden history. I want to say that I'm at heart an art historian. I started to study paintings and prints and drawings, but very quickly I got interested in gardens as well. And for me, garden history has become more and more important in my research and in my writing. There is one reason for this. I think garden history is important and could be very important to art history. So this is why I wanted us to have a conversation here in Munich.
Okay, so great to have you both here, and let's take a stroll in the park. Now, as you can see, we are standing in the garden, and of course, everybody uses gardens, but what is interesting, garden historians approach this place differently. And I would be interested in what you're doing. How are you approaching a garden when you start to do research?
So it depends a little bit from if you can go and see the topography at once. So I would always start with trying to get an information about the topography, the urban or the landscape topography. Then obviously you do the historic research, art historical research. You try to find the texts, the images referring to the garden.
One of the things that one needs to remember about gardens is they're constantly changing.
Yeah.
You know, they're changing with the weather, they're changing with the seasons, they're changing, of course, with history. They're being destroyed and they're being reconstructed. And so it's very difficult for someone who is not aware of all this to understand what happened. And this is the job of garden historian. So to try to reconstruct the different moments of the garden history, and also give a feeling that a garden is a bit more than just a normal work of art, let's say a painting, because you move in it.
I think that's a very interesting point for analyzing gardens. Of course, you move in a museum, you move in front of sculptures, but movement in a park is a bit different, especially with an English garden, isn't it?
Yes, obviously the paths are designed for you to walk in a certain way, to look at parts of the garden in a certain fashion. You have monuments that forces you to stop and look in certain directions. You have benches where you relax, and your body is also in a way, behaving in a different way, depending on the garden design.
So, but if you compare it to older versions of the garden, like French garden, Baroque garden, it's a very different thing with perception, isn't it? Like the idea of a picturesque garden, of different views that come into your view as soon as you walk through it.
Still, you always have pathways in garden. That is always a major point. So you walk in a certain way and you look in another way.
And you think it's natural.
Yes.
This is the point of the English garden, and what people sometimes don't understand, they're like, we are in nature. But everything that you see here has been constructed. It gives you the feeling that this is natural, and it's the tension between the artificiality of this landscape when you know about it and the naturalness. One difficulty is that to be a garden historian, you have to be a specialist of a lot of things, and
Yes.
that's very difficult, to be honest. If you ask me, I don't know about the names of all the plants. I should perhaps, but I don't.
You should.
In garden history, you have people who come from literary history, people who are, who go a lot to archives, and then people who know a bit more about plants. But this is what makes garden history super interesting, because it's almost impossible to work by yourself. You have to work
Yes,
with
exactly.
a team of people. It's a nice model for scholarship, to be honest. This is what I like
Exactly.
about it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You really have to work with the landscape architects and the experts in historic plants and gardens, and so they know every different tree and shrubbery. Once you know the trees, you understand why a special solitary tree in a certain place is so important.
This is crucial for preservation as well, because if you don't know exactly the history of the planting of a certain garden, you can transform a park in a completely wrong way and affect its whole ecosystem in a way. This is very, very important.
A place like this English garden in Munich is not only one of the most important historic public gardens in the world, but it's also the most important biotope of the Munich city. And not only a biotope, but still, as we could see in the pandemic, it was a place of such utter importance for the urban population, because it's the nearest place to rest, to breathe fresh air, to enjoy nature. If you ask about art and nature, that is a crucial and fundamental discussion about art in general. So this is not only a garden topic. And there you see how gardens are in the center, in the very center of art history. And the question of how art imitates nature is an absolutely crucial question of all discussion about
In
gardens.
the Renaissance, in the 18th century.
Exactly.
Although the aesthetic of the gardens are very different,
Yes.
then art and nature conundrum is at the center of everything. Really.
And even every garden pretends to be a true copy of nature. So this is how you see over the centuries how the human understanding of nature changes fundamentally. And this is exactly why garden history is so extremely important and interesting still today.
And understand, as we said earlier, that the idea of nature is a construct, and gardens can help us to think about this. Maybe today it's a very important question to ask, what have we done with nature, and what do we want to call nature? But hopefully now with the awareness that something needs to be done with the climate crisis, people might be a bit more interested in garden history.
And the preservation of historic gardens we have is more and more of a great importance, because if we do not care about their preservation today, they will be lost in a few decades. And let me come back to this inscription,
Yes,
because
that'd
it
be interesting.
tells us about the amelioration of nature by art. And this allows us humans to become better humans by walking and strolling in nature and by perceiving these designed scenes of nature.
So thank you so much. That was so interesting to be here with you and to get some information and some context, and also about art historical research on gardens. And I think we would just stroll around a bit and enjoy the gardens.